Welcome to the Learning for Legacy show with me, your host, Afam Onyenakala. This is all about the concept of making generational wealth understandable, practical, and accessible. I'll be exploring a range of topics and sharing conversations, interviews, and more. Because what good is building wealth if we don't build the people? I want to start off by thanking everyone who has supported and listened to the show since its launch. To date, people are listening from within the UK, USA, Nigeria, South Africa, Zimbabwe, India, Switzerland, Portugal, Israel, Russia, Botswana, Algeria, and Iran. I would love to hear from you, and I'm curious to know, how did you discover Learning for Legacy? What have you liked so far? What topics for the future would interest you? Let me know what things you'd like me to address. And if you like what you've heard from the show so far, please leave a review on your podcast platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'd like to hear some of these and give you a shout out where I can. Today, I'd like to do a case study on how a set of values, an idea, and a resolve can be the initial seed in your hand to usher in a harvest of generational family wealth in ways you could not even begin to imagine. And the focus of that study is a unique man that Will Smith will be playing in the soon-to-be-released film titled King Richard. That man, Richard Williams, the father of tennis superstars Venus and Serena Williams, had a 1 in a million vision of a path for his daughters, which elevated them to multi-millionaire status in one generation. That seed, the seed of that greatness, was first sown into him one generation earlier from a position of poverty by his hero, his mother. Julia Metcalf Williams, in the midst of labor pains, directed a mule and a wagon towards a hospital in a storm until disaster struck her transport. In that year of 1942, in Shreveport, Louisiana, the ugliness of racism meant that no one stopped to help her as she attempted to walk the rest of the way to hospital. She was determined to do anything for her unborn to live. And by chance, an old black man helped her get to the hospital before either she and that baby died. Just in time, she gave birth to Richard Williams. Born out of wedlock, Richard grew up in a 3-bedroom shack with his mother and 4 younger sisters. As a young boy, he did whatever he could to find money and find food to feed his family, and could never understand why his absent father would use his mother over and over again. Richard initially hated his name, as it reminded him of the father he shared it with. His mother, however, would tell him that it was a king's name, meaning lion-hearted. Early on, she was teaching him here the importance of reframing the narrative. Now, because he grew up without a father's love and support, he later determined that being a husband and father would be the most important role in his life. This is a key to understanding why he would do everything to fight and protect his daughters and guide them on the path to tennis greatness in the future. As a young man growing up, Richard faced racism, cruelty, and beatings in his area simply due to the color of his skin. But because he wanted more for his life, he decided to move away. The only problem was that racism and discrimination would still manifest itself in different ways. Richard, however, had already been through so much and survived that he purposed that nothing or no one would prevent him from creating the type of possibilities he increasingly saw within himself. While living in Chicago, he worked various jobs to send money back to his mother. He studied bookkeeping to improve himself, but was denied promotion, although he had the best scores. Now, for him, walking home one day, he decided to detour and walk through a white neighborhood and was shortly stopped by a police officer. Now, being aggressively confronted and called the N-word was the last straw for him. He had had enough. If he had lost his life, he would face that death with no fear. He was certain he would not and could not look down anymore. He would not compromise his dignity. As he became older and wiser, this internal pain and feeling of wanting to die instead became of wanting to live, to really live. Over time, he started various businesses in maintenance, in cement, and in security as well. He married Oracene Price and became stepfather to her 3 children. He so very much enjoyed being a father and taking care of the girls that in many ways it mirrored similarities of when he previously lived with his mother and his sisters. As a parent, he had a philosophy of teaching that you can make kids think they are weak or you can make them think they are strong. That your strength is no more an attitude that you have about yourself. He proved this one day when telling his stepdaughter Isha to cut the grass. Now, because they didn't have a lawnmower, she said she couldn't do it. So what Richard did was he took a pair of scissors and he cut every blade of grass while she watched in surprise. She would then go on to repeat this herself another time with the same pair of scissors. By this time, Richard assessed his life and had made progress to where he now owned his business, he now made money, and he had a family. But he could not accept that the 3 key parts of his American dream, that of real wealth, fame, and power, seemed untouchable. I believe for real wealth, the first key, he was referring to specifically generational wealth. Richard determined that his desire to overcome the world's expectations of him would not fail, even though he was ridiculed for being different. This now brings me on to the power of vision. In my last episode, I asked the question, what is your philosophy of service for why you want to build generational wealth? The values that underpin it will determine how brightly this shines in the future. Therefore, the vision of why you do it is just as important to accurately balance it with the mission of what you do. Now, as an adult, Richard was already thinking, what can I do to change the economic reality of my young family before that economic reality existed? This is why I encourage anybody to get started where you are. Because even if it isn't perfect now, you are still miles ahead of the one who hasn't started yet. It's harder to be in the game than to spectate, but it's only the participant who can win the prize. The scripture Matthew 7:7 that says, "Ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open to you." Now, for Richard Williams, one specific day brought that moment. One day, changing TV channels, he saw a female Romanian tennis player named Virginia Ruzici receive $40,000 as a check for winning the tournament. He was so surprised that it was possible to make that kind of money for 4 days' work that he said to himself, I'm going to have 2 daughters and put them in tennis. But like with any great idea, he was now hit with feelings of doubt. What do I even know about tennis? How will I teach a game I can't even play? What if my wife doesn't want to have any more children? Why do I always think of these crazy ideas? As he pondered on it and looked into the night sky, he thought to himself, my children will be set apart from the rest of the tennis players, just like that star in the sky. They won't be set apart because they're African Americans either. They will be distinguished because they are going to dominate the game. And so he went to his office and planned for how his unborn daughters would dominate tennis by first producing a 78-page typed document covering every aspect of tennis training for his daughters. He then wrote a 75-page tennis training manual for himself, his wife Oracene, and his unborn daughters 2.5 years before they were even born. After that, he started taking lessons and learning more about the game. Richard and Oracene gave birth to Venus in 1980 and Serena in 1981. In 1983, he moved his family from Long Beach to Compton in South Central Los Angeles. He studied successes like Muhammad Ali and thinkers like Malcolm X to do this because he believed the greatest champions came from the ghetto. It nearly cost him his life as he battled gang members for access to allow his girls to play at the local tennis courts. But he wanted to prevent his children having bad values by having them witness reality firsthand to strengthen them, and then exposing them to better alternatives. As a father, he did this by leading them by the hand and showing them both the ghetto and Beverly Hills by showing them both struggle and success. He predetermined that he would be their father first and their coach second in all matters, including tennis. He did this by, number one, nurturing them to become fine and happy people, and secondly, to nurture commitment in themselves by making them take responsibility for themselves. Because you can be committed to your child, but you cannot be committed for your child. Part of that commitment eventually spilled over to business. For example, a young Venus wanted to know how Richard ran his security business, so he showed her the importance of his structure and business contracts. Venus and Serena now both own businesses, and their father always made an effort to teach them about money and business. A significant insight into Richard as a father was that as Venus and Serena Williams climbed the tennis ladder, they always remained a family first. He wanted to ensure that they didn't lose their childhood too soon to tennis, or they could risk the chance of becoming like children in their adulthood. There are few important things that I wish to highlight about Richard Williams and his extraordinary life that we can all take something away from. Firstly, he recognized that when people are conditioned to inequality instead of equality, injustice instead of justice, hate instead of love, it becomes really hard to escape deep feelings of self-doubt and mistrust where they can't see a world filled with possibility or promise. But in order to pursue his American dream, which would include generational wealth, he had to propel his thoughts to an elevated state and not live a contained or limited life. Secondly, once he determined his dream, he then believed in planning ahead. His motto is, when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Thirdly, Richard was honest about how much he loved being a father and the responsibilities that came with it. He was honest about his mistakes, and he created an environment for his girls to be honest about theirs. He was also honest that they had to take responsibility for themselves. This honesty was key to the strength of his relationship with Venus and Serena. This authentic leadership enabled his girls to develop the competence and the character which has become part of his family legacy of generational wealth. By doing this, Richard taught them that tennis was just a game, but the life they lived off the court, their family life, was more important by cherishing and loving one another. He also balanced this by not being too soft on his kids, by demanding excellence of them. Fourthly, the cornerstone of what he taught Venus and Serena was the union of confidence, courage, and commitment. Faith and confidence work side by side, and Richard believed that if you solve things for your children, they cannot have faith in themselves. The only thing they will have faith in is in you. They will not have faith in God because their faith has never been tested. It has been stolen. Regarding commitment, the parent must let the child be committed, and commitment can't be taught unless you are willing to risk failure. Fifthly, Richard's top 10 rules for success he realized over the years are: number one, failing to plan is planning to fail. Number 2, always be positive. Number 3, confidence is essential to success. Number 4, faith is essential to confidence. Number 5, when you fail alone. Number 6, you learn by looking, seeing, and listening. Number 7, create theories and test them out. Number 8, always have a plan B. Number 9, an appreciative child is a blessing. And number 10, let no one define you but you. To find out more about the extraordinary life of Richard Williams, I highly recommend the book Black and White, The Way I See It by Richard Williams with Bart Davis. Thanks for listening to Learning for Legacy. To join our community or find out about what else we get up to, you can follow us on Twitter at Legacy Learning or on our website at www.legacylearning.co.uk. To access additional content or exclusives from this particular episode, please find the information within the show notes.